Welcome to RPG Reanimators, a podcast for GMs where we dissect horror scenarios and offer our experiences and advice to reanimate them at the table. I'm Holly.
I'm Alex.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Lex.
So, let's see what's on the slab. The subject of this procedure is Ladybug Ladybug Fly Away Home, written by Jeff Mollier for Call of Cthulhu. In this scenario, an FBI task force is assembled to investigate and resolve the kidnapping of a prominent extremist religious group before the end of the world as they know it. As with any dissection, we'll be discussing all the gross innards of the scenario, so from this point on, there will be spoilers. So, if you're interested in playing this scenario, please stop here and share this episode with your GM so they can listen and consider running this for your group. We'll also include links for where you can purchase a copy of this scenario for yourself in the show notes of this episode. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin our dissection. So, from the top, what's going on behind the GM curtain?
So, many years before the scenario starts, John Balfour went on a missionary trip to Kenya, where he encountered a group of folks that locals might have referred to as the Bloody Tongue. And while there, an aspect of Nyarlathotep imitated the Passover angel, a figure from Christian mythology who carried out the plagues of Egypt. And John truly believed he was talking to an avatar of God and fell for it, hook, line, and sinker.
So where do we fall? Just as, a question to the group, where do we fall on that? Because we've talked in the past before on other episodes, most recently our episode from Chaosium Con, and we mentioned using real religion and kind of making excuses and excusing it away with Nyarlathotep and things like that. How do we feel about that?
This is my one exception to my blanket statement that I think that there is too much Nyarlathotep in Call of Cthulhu and Delta Green, because this scenario actually fits the bill perfectly. This is him imitating a deific religion and someone who falls for that deception. So John comes back to the States and firmly believes that he has a direct line to an avatar of Christian God and is doing all of this stuff, generally just preaching a lot from the Old Testament. But along the way, he's just getting more and more sort of brought under this sway and makes him a really interesting villain, in my opinion, because he's not just your regular foaming at the mouth cultist who's going to sacrifice anyone that defies him. He truly believes with blind faith that this is something good, that he is doing what he believes Christian God's will, and is committing an atrocity because he believes that it is a sign of faith. So the whole thing is this deception, this misrepresentation, and that for a trickery entity seems very fitting.
Yeah, and I think for personally, it's a little bit of the origination too of the writer. Is I would feel weirder if this was set, at some other face history from, a primarily, quote unquote, I don't know the statistics, Christian leading nation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
That's kind of the big one here. So yeah, it doesn't, to Lex's point, it's not trying to invalidate what people believe. It's more of a manipulation of it. And yeah, I'd probably feel differently if it was a smaller faith, or one that was particularly being
marginalized.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
It's not like Nyarlathotep's imitating a coyote that's an actual
no.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
So what's Mr. Balfour trying to do? Well, he's trying to bring down the fire and brimstone and punish non-believers according to his faith, and to prove his loyalty to the Passover angel by, on a judgment day, he's going to sacrifice his daughter Regina.
Yeah. And I mean, this is all in service of not just proving his faith, but also he has some pretty alt-right sort of belief that the government is failing us and this is the way to take them down.
And you ask, why would he sacrifice his daughter? Well, if he's such a caring parent, or the thing is, he genuinely believes that his daughter is going to like survive their sacrifice and be spared according to the scripture.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, very
like
much
Isaac,
the story of Abraham and Isaac from the Bible. Yes, and so the character has a plausible reason to do this in the first place.
Right.
You know, it's very much structured around his faith. Yeah.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head, Holly. Like, he believes that this is a task given to him just as God gave Abraham and Isaac. And so he thinks that this sacrifice for Regina is just another test of his faith, kind of metagaming from the Bible, I guess. He thinks that his daughter Regina is going to be fine. But in reality, this is one of many potential apocalypse days. But since his time in Kenya, he has studied a lot of star charts and other things. That's all contained in his handy little book, and has identified multiple days on which the world can end. That's all in the book of the Passover Angel. I think it's sort of inferred behind the curtain that these are sort of times whenever the proverbial stars are right, and enable to do this sort of sacrifice would enable a different aspect of Nyarlathotep to manifest. That is the black wind. He sees this as the plagues of Egypt coming back again for the firstborn of the non-believers. But in actuality, I think Nye is just trying to do a long con to be able to manifest this bigger pestilent form of himself.
So I'm going to get into this a little later, but since the beginning of the scenario, the dates of these judgment days, 2 of them have already passed. One was 5 years ago when Regina wasn't even born yet, because she is a 5-year-old. And 2 years ago, one of the other characters, which we'll get into, Lindsay Peel, she stopped it with a Child Protective Services order. And then the most recent one is coming up on Tuesday, with the scenario starting, I believe, on Friday.
I have the scenario kick off Thursday night so that the agents start like Thursday night into Friday morning, basically.
So maybe I missed this when I was reading it. Does the Passover angel actually tell John that Regina would be spared, or has John come out of like he's just kind of made that up whole cloth? Because that really
this
changes.
Is all behind the scenes,
right? But for a character motivation, was he told his daughter would be spared, or does he just believe it? Because those are 2 different things.
As written, the scenario says he believes Regina will be resurrected, much as Abraham and Isaac. So this is, again, a deception.
Unlucky.
Well, that's a really interesting one, because it's not a deception even, which is even crueler. It's optimism.
Yeah.
No one
the killer of us all.
No one's ever told him that, killing your daughter wouldn't kill your daughter. He's just such a person of faith. He's going, no, I'm sure it'll be fine. Like, it'll all turn out great for me in the end. Maybe not. But to that point, that first sort of ritual that Alex mentioned that had been stopped was due to a retired ATF agent named George Lewiston, who orchestrates the events that kick off Ladybug Ladybug, because he went undercover under the alias Zach Nowizki, which comes up once and you'll definitely want to find that again. And yeah, he realizes like, oh yeah, they're still trying to kill this girl. Let's get her out of there. So he reaches out to his niece, Lindsay Peel, the same worker who had previously taken the child away from the parents into protective services. And this time they do more of a actual kidnapping instead of trying to go behind the law, because last time Lindsay got scolded pretty heavily for it.
Didn't work.
Good try. Didn't work.
Right. George has been an ATF agent whose main profession was going undercover in extremist or domestic terror organizations and doing things while he's there. So his motivations for actually infiltrating the church are very unclear. No one was officially tasking him to do this, but alas, he is there. And yeah, you're absolutely right. 2 years ago, he suspected that they were going to sacrifice Regina. So he reached out to Lindsay to abuse all of the official channels that she could in order to pull Regina out on bogus charges of child abuse. This pretty much burned all of Lindsay's professional bridges, and it kept Regina away from the Balfours long enough for the ritual to be disrupted. But now, after George has seen this actual unnatural manifestation of the Passover angel, he is realizing, oh, this is much worse than just some wackadoos trying to sacrifice their kid. This is something terrible. So went back with Lindsay. There wasn't a lot that they could do officially, so they decided to go off books. George shaves his head, burns off his fingertips, and puts on a little disguise, while Regina and her mother, Sarah Balfour,
the preacher's wife,
are out shopping at basically Walmart. He basically punches the mom, grabs the kid. The mom is trying to claw for her daughter and ends up grabbing a hold of the eponymous Ladybug backpack that contains a life-saving medication that she needs. And George, while distracted, sort of leaves the backpack behind. He grabs Regina, chucks her into Lindsay's car, who then peels away. And the scenario really kicks off with what comes immediately after, as George is shooting a firearm inside of the store and causing mass mayhem until a local SWAT team is called, keeping everyone very busy. And then, just as the SWAT team is surrounding him, he unalives himself in the back of the store. Meanwhile, Lindsay is driving like a bat out of hell across state lines and is holed up in a hotel to try and wait for 4 or 5 days until this ritual has passed, and doesn't really have any ideas for what's going to come after.
So at this point, we're kind of right at the beginning of the scenario itself.
Yeah.
So Nathan, how do the PCs get brought in? What's the typical like vector for them, and maybe even the backgrounds that players could consider when making characters for this?
Yeah, the suggestion is to be some sort of law enforcement. I think all of us read between the lines and go, probably a Delta Green sort of scenario, because that kind of makes sense, right? There's an obvious cult there. It works fine though, because there's an FBI agent in charge, Lucy Bates. So you could just make it a FBI sort of procedural. When they are brought in as FBI agents, Delta Green, whatever, it's a pretty bad situation. They arrive there, the media's swarming the place because this cute 5-year-old girl with a medical condition got swept off and kidnapped. And her mom was actually stun gunned too. Don't forget that, which is very funny. She got stun gunned, and then he came back and had to fight her for the backpack. Which is got some very funny art in the book for that. And then at that point, the agents are in it, right? They have to find this girl because everybody in the world is paying attention to this. This is like Little Jessica and the Well type stuff.
Well, more than that, because, we mentioned that John is the head of this Church of the Passover Angel. And this is kind of like a more extreme Westboro Baptist church that has a large following among the more what we would now call the alt-right crowd. So there's a lot of domestic terror orgs, various hate groups, ultra-conservative groups, stuff like that, that are, all around the Church of the Passover Angel. So it's not much of a stretch to say that places like Fox, air quotes, News is going to be all over this too, and it's going to get a ton of national coverage very quickly.
And that's a good way, if your players are, shall we say, trigger happy, to remind them that just killing the obvious cult leader would have really bad consequences and not look great. So there might be a reason they can't just shoot the guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to add that there's just a lot of doubt in this scenario, and we'll touch on that in the themes. But like, the people you're trying to help are not likable at all, and you might have your PCs question like what they're doing is right, especially with more supernatural stuff happening. The more that scenario drags on.
Well, now that you've mentioned it, Alex, let's kind of get into those NPCs, those unlikable people that are populated throughout this scenario.
Yeah, the 5-year-old.
Yeah, God, she's the worst.
On that note, then, the 5-year-old is Regina Balfour. As written, she suffers from, quote, a litany of chronic illnesses, the most serious of which is a chronic pulmonary obstruction. And she requires the use of an intravenous steroid pump that she keeps in her Ladybug backpack, or else she'll slip into an oxygen deficit and eventually pass away.
And obviously, her having all these conditions is not just a timer, but it's a way if she doesn't make it through the scenario, you can feel better about it and just be like, she wasn't going to last long anyways.
Tell me you play a lot of Delta Green without telling me, Nathan.
Hey, whatever you got to do to get those sanity points down.
That was actually going to be a question I asked. Is her illness mostly used to kind of keep your players on the clock? Is there anything more to it than that?
Yeah, and sympathy. And also, I would say it's an additional clue for investigators to find out, like, hey, these kidnappers, they don't want to kill this girl. That's why they're making attempts to get the medication.
Gotcha.
Right.
And it's a good excuse for the family, too, because they have a timeline that just happens to overlap the rough 5 days or she dies.
So props to the multi-use plot element. Woo.
Yeah.
All right. Well, who else is in this scenario?
Well, good old dead George Lewiston. We talked about him briefly. He's the distraction / kidnapper, prime kidnapper, I guess. At this, I don't know how you go with that, but yeah, he's a retired ATF agent and definitely probably in Delta Green. Like every Delta Green has to start out with a dead Delta Green agent.
No, he's not. He's not actually written Delta Green, just as written.
They wink at you though in the text,
right?
I think.
It's like, oh, we don't have the licensing.
Hey, but I think I can appreciate a scenario that just like owns it and says, hey, if you can use other resources out there, this is a pretty good one for that. So So George doesn't make it through, but Lindsay does.
Yes, she is apparently a good person, but a very bad kidnapper. Her uncle George basically showed her the videotape of this Passover angel when he was infiltrating the church, and she's like, oh, can't have this little girl get hurt. So she has kidnapped Regina, and she's on the run. She's currently, towards the end of the scenario, she will be at a motel should nothing else happen.
Right. And you alluded to this earlier, but one of the big clues that Lindsay can cause as the scenario is reaching maybe a 70% progress point is she is very concerned for Regina's health. She's keeping her sort of isolated in this hotel, drugged up on NyQuil just to try to sleep all of this off. But her condition is worsening. So eventually she gets desperate and breaks into a veterinary clinic that is somewhat nearby to steal at least some kind of medication that might be able to help her. This is a really big neon sign for GMs to hand to their players and say, hey, this happened over here and it was these kinds of medications that were taken. It sounds like an approximate match. So that can get them sniffing in approximately the area of their hotel.
And she's pretty good with the shotgun, right?
She's very good with a shotgun. She won awards and will tell players to signpost it. And then I think she has like a 95%. She does not miss.
Yeah, that's kind of nuts.
I think, it feels to me, and in an interesting way, it feels to me like this scenario really takes inspiration from things like Ruby Ridge and Waco, and kind of is encouraging that like shootouts with religious, extremists and things like that. So,
she actually has 2 shotguns for the record.
The New York
I'm just
reload.
looking at
Just
her
pull out
stats.
the next gun, so you don't have to reload. John Balfour. So basically, he's a fanatical cult leader. We already touched a little bit about him. He's trying to be a sympathetic parent, but like typically in my games, I find it to be useful to make him annoying, so the players start to suspect him.
I found it was helpful to portray John as just extremely earnest, but sort of misplaced. It reminded me of, God, I shouldn't make references if I can't remember the actor, but the one guy from 30 Rock who was like the assistant. Kenneth, yes. I was thinking almost like an evil Kenneth from 30 Rock. is he is just so earnest and is trying to help the players because he is very concerned about everything too. And so that's a good way to sow a little bit of doubt that like he is the head of basically Westboro Baptist Church. This is bad shit, but like he does seem like a concerned father at the end of the day, which he is still. And his wife, Sarah, is in the scenario, honestly, just written as something of an extension of him. Her name is written 3 times in the entire scenario, all within the same handout. And the rest of the time, she's referred to as the preacher's wife or some variation of that. There's not really a whole lot more there. She is also very concerned, kind of sitting active by the phone, waiting for clues and things to come in, monitoring their contact channels. And then eventually, if they can't get Regina, she will substitute herself as the focus of the ritual to summon the black breeze instead of the black wind. It's like a mini version that's meh. But after watching Midnight Mass, I just completely headcanon cast her as Bev from that there, because I think that it's such great casting for ostensibly polite, but filled with venom.
Yeah. I would say she is just as much as a fanatic as John. I will also say that there is merit to making them likable because they are cult personalities, cult leaders.
It fits the kind of feel of the Delta Green sort of setting too, right? Is they are, by all accounts, okay parents. Like they're taking okay care of Regina. They're preparing her for a future that she'll probably never see. We'll get to the 3D printer of it all later. But right, at the end of it is, if you end up killing them, they're good people doing bad things. Well, maybe not John. He did intend to kill all the firstborn, but still, you know.
But they were of the non-believers. Like
so it doesn't count.
Yeah, like he is firmly following the Old Testament Bible. That's all that he preaches in his church. So like he's not a swell guy, but from his perspective, he is the hero of this story and trying to do what he believes is God's will. So I love a good misguided villain. He's way past the edge of redemption, so you won't be able to talk him out of any of it. So, I mean, functionally, it works like the same manic cult leader, except this one is a bit more understandable, and that my players kind of felt a little bummed at the end of the day, where it's like, man, sucks to be him, I guess. That's about as guilty as they'll feel most of the time.
Hey, that's Delta Green, though.
Any other NPCs we should be aware of?
Yeah, so there's a couple minor NPCs that I'd just like to touch on. There's Lucy Bates, FBI agent in charge, basically the primary quest giver for the investigators, and just letting them know, hey, this is what it's at, this is the briefing, and I'll check in on you. Get it done. And then there's obviously some just like names added, just like as an explanation for why the Church of the Passover Angel has IEDs and car bombs. It's because they know Johnny Zero Zivovich, who is on a domestic terror watch list. But like he doesn't show up besides they explain the fact that they do have all this technology. And then there's a named police officer named Otis O.G. Gray, who's a sniper who I'm assuming is there to add tension to the motel, like hostage situation. Like, oh, is he going to take the shot? Ooh, is he not going to take the shot?
I don't know. All I got out of reading this, I just ditched both of these characters because all I got was, if they have a nickname, they're a bad guy. His name should be Johnny Balfour. Or
I'm Otis, I shoot civilians, Gray.
God. I could see that being useful for the scene, but at that point, just why does he need to have a nickname and all that? Is it too much?
It's
like,
the show he's
just
tough.
say, just say the sniper.
I'm not afraid
wants
to pull
to take
trigger.
the shot. Yeah, just say the snipers in this situation are all trigger happy and also
horny-ass
not
snipers.
Good shots. Yeah, she's almost. Lindsay has almost double the skill of the actual sniper, which is
it's kind of funny. Yeah,
the Johnny Zero. That guy, and then his base name got me so turned around with George that at some point they're like, oh, Johnny Zero shows up. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he died. No, they just have very similar names in my head, and then they just are like Johnny Zero, and it's like, well, that's obviously a fake name.
They're all fake names.
He
You
does
could
sound
make
like a
him an
Mortal Kombat
edgelord.
character. Yeah.
That would be funny if he was like a keyboard warrior too. Actually, I'm Johnny Zero. Here for the Passover Angel. Okay, Johnny.
Okay, so we've got our characters out of the way. Let's talk about the threats and the rough timeline to be aware of when you're running the game.
Sure. So the whole scenario is a race against the clock and multiple reasons. The players are going to be trying to track down the clues that George and Lindsay left behind to try and mitigate the media shitstorm that's coming around Regina's kidnapping. They also are going to be pressured to try to rescue Regina before she dies without her medicine in a few days, and also racing against these plagues that the Passover Angel is throwing at them, I think just to fuck with them because it's entertaining from old Nye's perspective, before they get to the end of the world that is on a Tuesday. The most interesting of these is going to be the plagues, which are the 10 plagues of Egypt from the Old Testament Bible in Exodus, that are water to blood, frogs, lice, flies, disease of livestock, boils, hail and thunder, locusts, darkness, and then the death of the firstborn.
Yeah, if you want to see a fun documentary about this, The Prince of Egypt, I find, does a really nice covering of this with songs and everything. You'll get right through it.
Some other threats is media. Basically, this young 5-year-old girl gets kidnapped, and everyone's gonna be having their eyes on them. So there's gonna be a lot of people at news conferences, maybe even following the investigation. And if they try to do anything out of line, other than just standard police procedural stuff, the news is definitely going to be on that.
Yeah, I had the news media as well as social media being really big threats the whole time that the players were around, and they were feeling a lot of pressure from it, because not only is the news going to be swarming around the police station in any of these places, they're going to be interviewing John and Sarah all the time. So if they're dicks to them, then they are going to slander their names all over Fox News and whatnot. They're going to put everyone on their tail. If these agents are not going to be subtle about it, they're going to flash their badge and say, actually, we're here looking into a kidnapping investigation at the car rental dealership. You better fucking believe everyone in that place is going to pull their phones up. They're going to be hitting Twitter. They're going to be recording things on their phone. And it made my players feel very paranoid that truly all eyes were on them at all times. And so they're feeling this additional pressure because their names and faces are now all across the country. And if they just fuck this all up, if they try to eliminate the vector that is Regina, then their lives are probably going to be over after this. And so it's really trying to balance, do we give this kid back to the parents that we know is an apocalyptically bad idea, but like that's the official task on the docket, to be known as heroes in the public's eye for like, the next few hours till the world ends.
Yeah, I think that especially provides an interesting challenge if you're going the Delta Green route, right? The secret identities and trying to keep the things that you do under wraps and truly not being able to do it. And something I'd love to get into later is even just the wrap up of the whole thing, right? Like if this all ends catastrophically bad in a giant shootout with a God-loving family, like how do you clean that up in the media and what that ends up looking like for your players going forward? We'll get into that in a little bit.
And then last but not least, I do also want to mention playing up the semi-ubiquitous threat of not knowing who is affiliated with the Church of the Passover Angel. It's something that I liked about the scenario is that local police are going to be in contact with the Balfours before they contact the FBI agents. And so at one point, I had Sarah call one of my agents saying, did you hear that they found that Peel woman's car? It's out by the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And that was a big oh shit moment for the players in realizing that they cannot trust the local police officers. Something that I did as a little bit of a call out with the Otis OG Gray character. I had them have a little tattoo of the cross with wings icon of the church, so that whenever he's kind of ushering them around, they can see this cross with wings under the collar. So then whenever they see the church's logo, they start realizing, son of a bitch, it's basically a cult spread around this entire state or country, and they can't know who to trust.
Oh, that's interesting. You made him a church member.
Oh, yeah. I did not like the way that all of that played down as written. So truly, I just had the local police and a lot of other people around Ohio, Pennsylvania, where have you, be members of the church and are trying to report on things as best they can. But that's in Reanimation.
That makes sense, because the church has millions of dollars of revenue. Like, they're actually pretty loaded, according to the scenario.
Which is shocking, I think, because it's written that their congregation is only like 100 people or something.
It says they get a lot of donations from like hate groups and alt-right stuff, but then the pastor also doesn't address that. Like, they say he never says that stuff. So I'm not quite sure what the line is from one to the other. Like, why are they donating? Yeah, it's not clear to me.
Yeah. As written, the church, Holly, you were right that it's written, it can only hold like 100 people at once. So there's just a lot of things about this organization and these people that feels a bit incongruous. John is preaching Old Testament Bible stuff, but he's not saying a lot of like typical Westboro Baptist Church, just outright hateful things. He's only preaching to follow the Bible and get good with God before the end of the world. And yet he has attracted all of these alt-right domestic hate groups who are pouring in donations. And so they actually have millions of dollars at their disposal, which they have been using to secure treatment for Regina because they don't have health insurance because, you know, they think that that's a socialist communist policy that good Christians don't have insurance. So they are relying on donations to pay for the full out-of-pocket medical expenses for their daughter. And their bomb shelter. Yes, and the bomb shelter underneath the church and all kinds of stuff in that there. I think that we are never given a full explanation for it because it's kind of, the players will never get that information. It sort of exists because it makes for an interesting setting, in my opinion. But
do you think it would be better if the pastor was just explicitly preaching these things and was more of like a lightning rod for this? Like, it's a little bit more obvious why they're donating, but it makes him a lot less sympathetic for player characters.
Yeah, I think that that's it, is that if he is just a fucking dick that is swinging out slurs and homophobia and stuff left and right, then you're not going to be really inclined to get the kid back. You're like, you know what, man, go fucking do it yourself. So at least if he seems earnest and not directly harmful, I think that that's an easier pill for the players to swallow to actually try to go and get Regina.
Yeah, I think it kind of does beg the question of like, why is this pretty small church denomination on the federal government's radar with ATF? But, you know, I guess that's one of those things you can just kind of...
It's mostly by association because like half dozen domestic hate groups are avid,
like
devout followers. Yeah, like they're giving money to them. So like, ATF, FBI, and whoever is like, man, what the fuck? Something's wrong here. So they keep sending teams and investigations in, and they're coming up dry each time. This is then fanning the Passover Angel Church's anti-government rhetoric that like, we're the persecuted Christians, literally. And I think that that's sort of bleeding into that narrative.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is they've been investigated for their anti-government, then they play that up so much that kind of they just attract all that sort of attention. I could see that as being an excuse of how they're getting this money.
And that's also a reason why the players immediately have a really strict timetable, because whenever Lucy Bates contacts the player characters to get in on this, George Lewiston has already obscured his identity enough that only like one of his co-workers happened to see the security camera footage and ID him before the local police did. Whenever I ran it, I said that he unalived himself with a gun underneath his chin, so it blew his face off, unidentifiable, can't do dental, can't do anything. They had to do like blood DNA testing, so that takes a minute. So once the news gets out that it's a retired ATF agent who then stole this group's kid, that is the absolute match on a powder keg fueling all of their anti-government rhetoric. And it's like, see, this is what they do. And that is what they are going to hit the news with immediately. So it is in everyone's best interest to try to resolve this as quickly as possible before it hits that national news and his name actually gets out there. That also makes a great conclusion to your first session too, is seeing all of this blasted on the news as, oh shit, now it just picked up.
Well, I think it's time for us to get into the beating heart, or maybe the thesis of the sermon of this scenario here.
Oh.
Okay, so I want to start this one off with a little bit of a tangent. A friend of the podcast, Antonio Marchena from Scream Cthulhu Entertainment, is really active in both the English and Spanish Call of Cthulhu scenes. And at Chaosium Con, he shared with me that not only is Ladybug one of the most popular scenarios in terms of APs out of the things we leave behind, but there are just about as many APs of Ladybug in English as there are in Spanish. And I think that this speaks to one of the beating hearts of the scenario, is that it really plays up these contemporary issues of Americana Christian fanaticism, conservative hate groups, oversaturation with guns. And, you know, GMs don't really need to know anything about Ohio or Pennsylvania, but if they're aware of Fox News narratives and just general gestures at everything, then they have some good key referential touchstones to work off of.
Yeah, it does very much feel very aggressively American in its premise.
Well, I would like to say that theme of the scenario is doubt, right? It even says in the text, one of the themes is that the Balfours, they're dangerous. And are they dangerous, though? It's up for your PCs to decide if they're actually just these extreme cult leaders or if they're just genuinely worried about their daughter. Now, if this were a one shot, I would probably simplify things and like up the supernatural. So that way that doubt is kind of diminished and it's easier to make a choice.
Yeah, you don't really have time for doubt if you're trying to work within a 4-hour time slot.
Right.
I doubt we can finish this on time.
Because otherwise your investigators are going to be like, okay, well, we returned the kid to their parents. Done. Investigation's done. We're good. We did our job. And then the world ends.
Do you feel like when you bring in investigators who are playing DG agents that doubt is muted?
Absolutely. Because they're like, okay, there's weird shit. Kill it. Set it on fire. Shoot everything.
Yeah, I was holding on to this until we got to it in Reanimation. But honestly, I ran this scenario as Delta Green, had a great time. But I strongly recommend running it as an onboarding operation for potential candidates to be agents. This is essentially going to be like a last things last situation, that they are officially there to get the kid, bring him back, and also clear up anything in George Lewiston's house that shouldn't be there. And then they get embroiled in all this other shit. So it's a great onboarding operation there. Or running it with a mix of civilians and DG agents so that at least the civilians can role play this kind of, now wait a minute, this is kind of weird. And the DG agents have to have the little two-faced role play of, oh, no, you just stay here and look at that. I'm going to be right back. And that led to some fun times at the table. I don't recommend running this as full straight DG agents because they're just going to nuke the kid and it's going to take a lot of the suspense out of it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Personally, I just run it like as Call of Cthulhu investigators.
Cthulhu.
You may have a different opinion once you hear my edits. I think it made it much easier with DG.
Yeah. The DG sort of point too. I really like the idea of it being onboarding because this is such a public event. And DG's going to know that. I think, I mean, from a lore side, I would not put a seasoned DG person on this because their face is all over the news. There's no way you're going to avoid it. So this would be a different case where you're like, look, guys, I need you to not use stupid identities. You are not Agent Gazpacho. You are your real name, and you are going to do this, and then you're going to shut up and not do anything for a long, long time.
Well, counterpoint. Why would they onboard amateurs to do this, and with a high chance of fucking up, who don't understand what DG is all about, and not put on their seasoned veterans that know what they're doing and they're professionals. So like you could see it either way.
That's because the seasoned veteran is Agent Lucy Bates. And she is there micromanaging the bejesus out of all of this and saying, you report directly to me. And so if the players find something that's really weird, like, I don't know, a video containing an avatar of Nyarlathotep recording, then she's going to say, don't give that to the officials. I'll take care of it. And you can have someone there to at least be sure that it looks scrubbed, but you have expendables in the front line, which, if anything, sounds more Delta Green to me.
The mean GM and me actually could almost see this as a retirement scenario for your Delta Green agents.
Oh, that's mean.
Where it's like, you're probably, maybe you're going to die in this shootout. That's a sacrifice we're willing to make. Or your name is all over the media and you fucked up and you've killed a bunch of people. And it's like, well, we were looking for a reason to get rid of you anyway.
In terms of just a few other beating hearts, we touched on one earlier, as I think that this scenario is very unique in terms of manifesting horrors from Christian mythology without feeling like it's getting into really icky territory of, oh, this religion's actually real. I don't know. This is the only one that I've actually seen that actually did it well, in my opinion.
Yeah. From my experience with the scenario, the tone of it just seems more procedural. Like the procedural knob's been turned up a lot, whereas the horror knob, it's slowly increasing.
Yeah, and kind of to that effect too is right. It's procedural, it's high stakes, super high stakes from the media side, right? Like we don't usually see that in scenarios as the cover up of this is a huge part of it. And a huge part of it towards that is that everything is being watched. And they call out like security cameras are going to be a big part of the book, like call it out, because one of the themes is, God is watching, you're watching, everything is watching.
Yeah. It feels to me a little bit like True Detective season 1 in its investigation.
For sure.
A missing child and definitely cultish undertones and child murder and things like that. So I think you could for sure take inspiration there. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good one to content warning for people that are going to play. There's a decent chance Regina just dies.
Yeah.
So if you've got players that are not into that, this might not be it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I was checking with players if they would want to be in this, I just said off the bat, this is going to deal very heavily with child endangerment and possibly child death. Also, lots of religious stuff, and you're bound to get into some political things with having such an avid alt-right following. So those are some massive content warnings to clear up with your players before even getting seated at the table.
So what would you guys consider some of the strengths and limitations of Ladybug Ladybug?
I think the set pieces are very nice. You have the hail scene, which is super cool. You have the locusts just like waiting around the motel hostage situation. It's really tense with the sniper that's a little trigger happy, and they're trying to talk to Lindsay.
And there's like little traps in there too, like that she's put metal over the window. So it's actually prepared for a pretty dynamic action scene.
Yeah, I think the scenario is very narratively well written. It's a really good twisty, turny mystery that are going to force your players to try and make some hard choices. Like Alex mentioned with some of the set pieces, the hailstorm scene in the Seventh Plague is super cinematic as written, and one of my group's absolute favorite high points. I think that it's really well done in the book, and the art that goes along with it is great. It fits perfectly.
Yeah.
If the players get to the compound towards the finale, that's very memorable as well, with like car bombs going off, people running around screaming, them trying to get in.
I actually have thoughts on that.
I'd love to hear them later.
Not right now. Time and place. I think it very effectively uses its theming with the plagues and the sacrifice of the firstborn child and the biblical imagery everywhere. I think it does a really good job of that. And I think it's very It's a very interesting story.
Yeah, very historically accurate.
Yeah. it's a breath away from being a cult scenario. So close.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that breath, in my opinion, is, again, one of the best appropriate uses of Nyarlathotep in a Call of Cthulhu scenario, that it really fit him to a T. Yeah, can't recommend that one enough. As someone who is Nyarlathotep fatigued.
It's like the ultimate dick move. It's very good.
What about limitations?
Well, I do think that the clue trail is super linear, which makes it railroady. Right? They're going to go from A to B, and then there's clues that the keeper has that they can give out at any moment to get for the PCs to get to the next part without anything that they can do.
Yeah, it does feel like on first glance, this could be a sandbox. Like I remember reading it for the first time, like, ooh, this is going to be really sandboxy. And then you get to it and it's like, no, it's not.
Well, and that's where I have my little asterisk behind. This is really narratively well written, because while it is that, I think that the author got too caught up in placing the clues and the plagues within this linear narrative that he portrayed. And so it could make the scenario be really railroady if you tried to stick with it directly as written. But instead, it is a great sandbox. If you basically keep a timeline of these are spots where Regina and George left some clues behind, and then there are contingencies. One of my favorites that's suggested in the book is if the players don't find the turnpike and the toll booth to tell them what road Lindsay was on when she left Ohio, one of the toll booth operators will call in like when the Amber Alert hits. And so there are some insurance policies, because the mystery is pretty difficult to investigate. And there's a big risk of your players getting frustrated and not knowing what to look for. And that's when you can have some of these extra clues come in. Most of the clues either tell players why George and Lindsay did this, what they did to prepare, and then generally where Lindsay might be.
And oh my God, George and Lindsay, they prepped so much.
They did. And there's a lot of evidence of it. And it's every step of the way you're finding out that, like, now, wait a second. They were really careful about this. Like, something doesn't add up here. I think that it is done well. It's just not done great from an RPG perspective, because I think that it really shines if you would have a GM call out box with these are the clues and a timeline. These are the plagues and some suggestions, instead of nestling it all within paragraph form.
Yeah, completely agree. And the contingency I want to highlight is the railroadiness of it keeps you towards those scenes, right? Because you can still have the case of at that shootout, if Regina doesn't make it out, you can still have the finale at the church because the mother takes the place. If you don't get this clue, the toll booth operator, like you said, will help out. So you at least have backup plans in your pocket.
But that's all going to be for technically reanimation. Like, this is one of the bigger limitations of the story is, like Alex said, it's really railroady as written. I don't recommend running it directly as written.
And I love your idea of the little call out boxes on the side of like, oh, this is about the time they could get this clue. Because, it was a little difficult to find that in the paragraphs on a reread.
All right, Holly, I'll tee you up for one. Yeah. What is your biggest critique of this scenario?
Yeah, personally, I can't get behind the art.
No, I'm kidding.
No, but actually, it's bad.
It's a little tough. It's a little tough. I'm always a bigger fan anyway of real photos or, real people. But yeah, the art was a little tough. The little girl is kind of scary.
The little girl looks like a little gremlin that your players are going to think that she is some kind of demon vector, because I showed it to my players after the game was over. They're like, oh, I would not have been as invested trying to save her.
That just goes along with the Chaosium model of making your bad guys look nefarious and evil in their artwork. So.
Although the father at least looks fairly
normal,
like milk toast. Same with Lucy Bates.
And then you get to the security camera footage.
What's supposed to be a pretty dynamic situation of two people fighting for their lives over a backpack looks like
A tug of war.
Well, she's invested.
It looks like you set some dolls up and then pose them there, and then that's all the dynamic movement that we get. But
we can't be too mean.
Yeah.
all right,
George might just be really strong,
Yeah.
and it can just stand there holding it. I do like though the Lindsay and her like pushing the dresser against the door. And I know Lex, you talked about the hailstorm. That art with the angel in the sky is really cool.
So that one is great. There's a reason that they also made that the cover of this scenario. Like, that's really, really great art. But before I get too far into just bashing things, I did want to share another interesting tidbit, because while I was talking with Antonio about the scenario, he told me that there was a publishing company called The Hills Press that got licensing from a few of these Stygian Fox books to translate them into Spanish and then publish them abroad in Spain. Whenever they did that, they must have hired a new artist or illustrator for a lot of these scenarios, because the art is totally different and, in my opinion, much better. Here, hold on. Let me share my screen real quick so that y'all can see. Please, nothing embarrassing. Awesome.
Bold of you to keep that stuff up in the middle of a podcast.
Oh, God, Lex.
I like to live dangerously. So we got the beginning.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we got...
Yep, same art.
That's Regina.
Mm-hmm.
This is the new Regina.
Okay, yeah.
We have Lucy Bates.
Yeah.
Lucy Bates is much hotter.
Yeah, Lucy is a lot better.
Yeah. Well, that is the key change they made.
That's the quickest way to make me care for a character. Just make them hot.
Jeez.
But, so here's the security camera.
Honestly, secret for any character.
That's the new security camera, where it's George actually shooting in the store.
He's got the gun, yeah.
What do we got here? Got John.
All right, yep. There's John.
Now have El Reverendo Balfour.
That's actually really good.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
The map is the same. Clues are the same. Yep. Where I said that this was good, I think that they also approved, because they kept that one with the hailstorm.
They kept the hailstorm.
Yeah.
See this.
Then that's
hotel.
the new.
Ooh, I
Lindsay.
like it.
Okay. Yeah. I like that.
And then also you have Lindsay as kind of vampiric. I don't know. It was a bit much.
Yeah, that looks very vampiric.
You got OG now just looks like a dick cop instead of a weird Mohawk caricature.
Actually, that kind of reminds me of Nico.
Nico from Grand Theft Auto 4.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then that is the final ritual scene to do for a handout.
Yeah. It's a little bit more stained glass, somebody about to stab their kid feel. A little bit more Abraham and Isaac kind of vibes. Yeah.
As opposed to a bunch of dolls posed and someone going, oh, in the background.
Yeah. Look at me. I've got a vest on.
I'll put a link in where you can try and get a copy of this if you're interested in getting this Spanish PDF, because it may be an asset for some GMs.
What else did we hate about this scenario? For
the record, I want to say too, I do think there is a difference in the printed and PDF. Just looking at the copy, Regina doesn't look as terrifying, I felt like, in the printed version. And actually the new version scared me a lot more. I think it was just how like dark the lips and like mouth looked like. Is she a vampire?
Oh, other limitations. Let's talk about just like, I would say if the investigators just find and kidnap Regina, having like going full send on that option, it feels kind of cheap that, it's the mother that sacrifices herself instead and the world still ends. Or to a lesser degree.
And there's not enough of a hint towards that, right? That the mother would take the place.
I actually don't think they would really know anything was going down there.
Right. Which, that's really out of left field.
And they already took the huge risk of kidnapping the girl on a hunch. So, like, why punish them with that?
Right. Did you find, Lex, that people got clued in too much when you asked about them being the firstborn or second-born kid?
Oh, you can obfuscate that by asking, what was your family life growing up?
So I tried that because this was also one of Seth Skorkowski's recommendations when he covered this. And I didn't really get any good answers. I asked them what was their family situation like, and just other key details in there, asked what their birthday was. And it's just generally whenever players are making their characters, these are not really things that come up, and I don't think players are used to them. And if you dial in too closely on it, it just isn't a thing. For me, whenever I was running it around the time that the player characters were becoming convinced that they were actually getting stalked by miniature plagues of Egypt, I just asked them, so you don't happen to be the firstborn child in your family, do you? As like a little way to have them think, shit, I really need to get this resolved before number 10 kicks in.
Damn it, I should have made more backstory.
I'm honestly, if they don't provide sufficient information, bam, they're the firstborn.
Yeah.
So from now on, I'm firmly in the middle-ish. I don't want to be exact middle, but I'm going to have three older, 4 younger, and because then the 7th
and
kid's
then
in
the
there
GM's
too,
going to be
so
like,
they can get got.
gotcha. We're going to put you in an Uncle Timothy's wheel situation now. Get ready to fight all your siblings.
Damn, I made them all bodybuilders.
I would also say as a limitation, they're super deadly at the end if you do get to the compound. Like, there's people with suicide vests, car bombs, like, that shit hurts.
Yeah, there are 2 major limitations in this scenario as written, and the first is the clue trail is not good. Alex, I don't remember if you've referred to the credit card thing already.
I did not, but go for it.
I mean, it's bad, honestly. It's such an obscure clue that the scenario completely hinges on. This is basically the hidden diary that is a big issue in another Delta Green scenario that, if you know, you know. It felt like the author had the beginning and the ending, and then it hinged on this one clue, and there was not a good way to deliver it. I resolved this that we'll get into reanimation, but it's just really weird as written. And then also, go ahead, Nathan.
I was just going to say, as written, I would like to quote this because I don't know what you're talking about. Either his neighbor or his daughter know that George likes to frequent a diner called Extravaganza in a grungy part of downtown Cleveland.
Oh, what's not to get?
What about
right?
that is tough to find? Yeah, that's so. Of course, you're going to ask where George ate breakfast.
Yeah.
And like to bring that up in normal conversation, during interrogation or something, that just seems kind of forced.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you know about George? Oh, well, he loves to eat at Extravaganza.
Right. And even when they're there, like they have to talk with the server and then pass it. There's like a few clues that are gated behind roles in really weird ways. And it's like, no, it's just not good.
Oh, just get a shit ton of receipts probably that you can find. In his house.
But it's like having to track down the card from the receipts. Like that's just weird. Don't do it. Don't use it. And also, I really don't like the ending in this scenario. I think that it's sort of all roads point to car bombs and suicide vests and this big explosive showdown. Yeah. And whenever I ran it, I was running out of time and needed to wrap it up. So I sort of funneled things into something close to that ending as written. And that was the part that my players were the most dissatisfied about. Because they really wanted to pick up Regina and basically go on the run and now be the new kidnappers with the whole country on their tail, which could have been really cool, but like that would have stretched another 2 sessions, so it just didn't happen. I really think that GM should try and consider different ways that the scenario can conclude in a really satisfying, climactic way. The big explosions at the church just didn't really hit in my group.
Well, it's up my alley, and it worked for me.
I am not surprised in the slightest.
Well, I did a little tweaking as well, so we'll get into that.
So one of the things that is in the game is that the LaFleurs have bought a 3D printer that they claim is for their daughter to keep her up on technology. She's 5. So I guess they're never going to replace the 3D printer because those aren't new. But of course, the 3D printer is for the illicit guns that this organization is printing to give to their people because they couldn't just have licensed guns. I mean, they're on watch lists, I guess, but I don't think that stops people from having guns. They somehow have C4. I don't think they're printing C4 out of this printer.
Yeah, your daughter's looking into some very interesting files, Mr. Balfour.
that was such a weird detail in talking about, oh yeah, they have zip guns at this whole climactic showdown. I just really recommend throwing that out. Like, truly, that's the extremist groups are the ones with the guns. So the Balfours don't have anything there, but maybe they dig them up out of the woods behind the house or something, like just off of the property. So
bro, they have a fucking bomb shelter. Like,
yeah, they have some in the altar.
That's
like,
crazy.
The altar has a secret compartment with weaponry, but not for the pastor, I don't think.
Yeah, I had to really dial in that kind of Americana gun use as whenever the players can pull up the governmental information about the Balfours, they see that they have multiple firearms, including a Glock 17 and then a subcompact Sig Sauer pistol that has a pearl handle or something on it. And like, you can give some clues that like John and Sarah are both packing anytime that the agents are around them, as a little bit to play at odds that like the really nice Christian folks, like that lady 100% has a gun in her purse.
Yeah. Maybe don't give her 95% in it.
Loves
coward.
Not unless you want to show her awards on the wall that say
she'll take you to meet God. Oh.
Set this whole thing in Texas and it all just makes more sense.
Just love stand your ground laws.
Well, they do say you can set it anywhere you like, which I appreciate. I probably wouldn't change it because it's all written.
And it has really nice maps. It's something that we haven't talked about much, but I really appreciated the interstate maps and stuff like that. I changed some of the location details, but yeah, I think, Holly, to your and Nathan's points, you can set this anywhere in America. I think that's kind of getting to the one beating heart that like this just kind of feels unfortunately American.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aggressively American. The only other thing I'd like to mention that I know we're going to talk about in Reanimation is I really wanted to see more of the plague aspect.
Yes.
You know, I think Seth does mention this in his video as well. Like, some of them are used to really good effect, but most of them aren't. And I think there's room in there to do better. But we can talk about that in the next section.
What, you don't think seeing George's sick cat with boils is sufficient
or
keying
a
in?
little blood in a fish tank, or a 5-year-old with lice? You know, it's like, okay.
The neighbor who comes over to explain extravaganza also has to bring the boil cat.
You forgot 3 plagues. The neighbor hobbles over.
Hey, folks, have you heard about extravaganza? Also, have you met Mr. Snuggles here? Oh, you got the
This
boils.
is George's cat. Any of you vets?
Oh. Well, with that in mind, let's get into Reanimation.
So, kicking things off, like we sort of ended on it, we're going to transition right into it. I really think, to try and highlight one of the beating hearts of this scenario, you need to keep the plagues in your back pocket to use when most dramatically appropriate for pacing. Do not tie them into all of the encounters as written. I think the hailstorm is kind of an exception that makes the rule. The rest of them, you need to keep floating for when it makes the most sense. And also keep them on a sticky note. That way you get them in the right order if you're not super versed in the Bible like I am.
If you didn't see the award-winning gripping documentary that Nathan's mentioned. Well, I think, you know, I would like to go through them, honestly, because I think there's some good ideas to be had there. So I think the first one is blood, right?
Yep.
And I think the blood in the fish tank thing is a little like boring. I don't know. I like, as a player, I would even be like, why is my GM telling me this in the first place?
What I did was, during like the meeting with Lucy Bates, they're gonna be in some kind of conference room. There's gonna be coffee being served.
Yeah.
As soon as they take that first sip, oh, it's all iron, baby. This coffee tastes like blood.
Yeah, I like it.
And that kind of sets things off.
Mm-hmm.
A little supernatural twist.
So with me, I had these plagues sort of hovering around George and Lindsay, and the closer that the players got to them, the more that they started directly affecting the players. So, like, I agree that as written, just the little blood in the fish tank isn't very much. That's why I cranked it up to 11. When the agents are first keyed in, it's an active crime scene, and I strongly encourage them to go there in person to see what information is there. I had George unalive himself in front of the aquarium wall in the back of a Walmart. And whenever they get up there, all of the aquariums are red and casting this
like
deep, ominous glow all over George's body.
Ooh, nice.
And really getting into that I described, like, it had greater coverage than what should realistically be possible. And there's like dead fish and chunks of gray matter floating in the aquariums behind it. So it was a really descriptive scene, but didn't immediately key them in that, like, it's water to blood. It was something they figured out a little later.
That's really cool. That's so memorable.
I really like that. My
subtext, it's for cowards.
Those poor fish.
If you do the DG thing of giving your players that moment before the scenario really kicks off of like, what is your character doing in their everyday life? My thought was like, they get ready and you kind of narrate this like in the shower and you see blood circling the drain, but you can't even find where it's coming from, or like,
I like that.
The shower head is like blood. That's a little bit like unsubtle, but maybe just like the blood circling the drain a little bit,
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Maybe you had a nosebleed.
Yeah, maybe so.
Check it out. Yeah. So here's a question that's true for all of these. Since it's a cult and they're looking for these signs, it would be interesting to have John's followers be treating these places as holy sites in some fashion, I think, right? Like maybe a little bit of time after this shootout, you start having people congregate outside those aquariums, kind of like the statues of the Virgin Mary that drip blood or something. As it might be a way to keep the cult present.
So, I agree, but I also think that in order to maintain some of the tension in the scenario, it's important to pace out the intensity of these manifestations until it reaches a boiling point, which I really think is at the thunder and lightning. Because
very
a lot of it should be sort of debatable on maybe it's just bad luck, maybe it's just coincidence.
Sure.
And then what I had in my game, as a lot of these manifestations are just around the player characters, and it's bordering on uncanny and just like, damn it, this is okay, like 4 times in a row is getting weird now. But then you get into, jumping ahead a bit, the thunder and hail. And I think that it's perfect that, as written, John Balfour drives up in his car totally unharmed by all of this. And by this point, my players are completely convinced that these are actually the plagues of Egypt. And they're like, what the fuck did you do? Why are you doing this to us? And he doesn't know what they're talking about. Whenever they say that they're being followed by the plagues of Egypt and that this is clearly one of them, gesturing to all the hail and destruction, glory, glory be, hallelujah. This is truly a sign from God that these are the end days. The apocalypse is truly coming on Tuesday afternoon. And like that just caused him to double, triple in on his convictions and veracity in chasing Lindsay Peel and everything else down. So it could be a cool way for your players to accidentally make things harder for themselves because they didn't think about how the other people would take it.
I like that a lot. Plus, it's really creepy if the pastor is like, "You've been blessed. Oh, you're so lucky. I wish I was you."
Boils are coming up on her face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say center these supernatural events around the PCs strictly because the game's about the PCs. The game is centered around the people who can change the game. Make it about them. Make them feel weird and uncomfortable with these supernatural occurrences. Maybe in-game, Nyarlathotep knows that these are the players. These are people who can change the world.
Well, so as you're going to be making these things creepy around the players, Alex, what did you do with the frogs in your run?
I'll just have it rain frogs. It's easy.
Someone has playing with catapults.
It's normal that, I guess it's not normal, but it's not unheard of that fish or frogs rain down from the sky.
Yeah, it has happened before.
With my run, because I started it off basically Thursday night, because knowing my players, they're always going to want to hit the ground running and do things immediately. So they went to the Walmart, they found his body, and they're like, all right, well, we're going to go to Lewiston's house and follow up on that since we know this lead before the cops do. So they're driving through Lewiston's neighborhood at night, getting closer to his address. And then it's a little misty, it's a little foggy. And then they start hearing, and their vehicle starts kind of skidding on the road a little bit. Like, what the fuck? So they turn their high beams on and look around, and the street in front of Lewiston's house is covered in frogs that are pouring out of the storm drains.
No.
And it's another one of those just like, that's fucking weird and uncomfortable, but it's not, it just, maybe there's flooding around. It hasn't rained today, but yeah, that was my little manifestation for them.
It's within the realm of possibility.
Right. It's weird and uncanny that I think is important for your first few plagues.
Yeah, I think frogs on windows, you know, because they can stick to windows and stuff like that, staring at investigators, coming out of the plumbing, coming out of the toilets, cut open your food, and there's a little frog that just like hippity hops out of there. Just all well and good.
George was watching the Muppets on his TV that they're singing It Ain't Easy Being Green.
I think that it can be, you know, I guess it's just a risk. If you have any players who are just in tune with their Bible stories, lots of frogs might really start tipping them off that like this is a plague situation. But, you know, that's just.
And is that a bad thing if they're tipped?
No, I guess not.
Yeah. Then you get that fun dramatic role play of like, at what point would this character be utterly convinced that they are actually being hounded by this?
Yeah.
All right. How about those lice?
To quote Seth Skorkowski, easy, give your players lice.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the simplest solution is the easiest.
But what I did to try and spice this one up is actually I lifted some descriptions from Lindsay's hotel room from the end of the scenario, because it describes that she's been haunted by this shadowy specter, and like there's Bibles that are open to the page of Exodus all around in her hotel room, that like it's hanging from the shower hook. Great detail. Do that to your players because it's fucking weird. But something that I did is I was toying with narrating scenes, describing things happening that the characters don't notice. So I had all the players be going to their hotel rooms, and they're like, all right, good night, and turns the light off. And then there is a figure in shadow standing in front of the door, only visible just through that little bit of light coming through from the window blinds. One player was just like, wait, hold on, I'm going to get up. And so he turns the lamp on. The figure disappears. He looks around the room. He smells something like wet ash and doesn't find anything. And so then he goes back to bed, clicks off the light, and that figure is still right in front of the door staring at him. And then we move to the next day. So like the players were really uneasy, but their characters just wake up with lice and not really knowing much why. That was another one I lifted from Midnight Mass, because I think of the face in the window that got me good.
Yeah.
This hotel fucking sucks.
It's giving you lice. Yeah.
It's giving you lice. What about flies? What are you going to do with flies in this scenario?
I feel like that one's just an easy, like, just flies everywhere. I think as it's written, or no, this might have been a Seth Skorkowski one, where there's just flies all over the interrogation, or not the interrogation, like the debrief room, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember on that.
I think that was a Seth thing.
If you really want to freak out your player characters, have flies like land on them.
Yeah.
That gives me the chills
everywhere.
Yeah, you got to be a little careful just because there's a little bit of overlap between flies and locusts. And I think you don't want to overdo the flies because of the locusts later.
That's also a really good point, Nathan, that I think it's important to change up where and how these things happen. Because something I struggle with a bit later is that you have the thunder and hail in a car. And then if you have locusts in the car, it felt a bit repetitive. So in my run, I had George be a Delta Green agent, and he left a clue to lead the agents to a green box, that his house was totally clean and everything was in the green box. But boy, whenever they opened it up, he shouldn't have left that Taco Bell in the trash can, because as soon as they quickly whip open that storage container door, flies rush into their face and their mouths, and it's just pouring out of there. That like it was another really gross scene, and my players were like, God damn it, I knew it was going to happen sometime. So it was fun by that point.
I just finished rereading Dr. Sleep again for the second or third time. So the main character has this ability that when like people are going to be dying, he sees them covered in flies, but they don't react at all. Like that's so I just have this idea of like the players at some point encountering an NPC who's like a face of flies just all over him and like crawling across, and he just like, this person doesn't react at all because it's not real.
It reminds me of Night Vale.
Not real.
The man in the tan jacket with a suitcase full of flies.
For the livestock, you can pay homage to those classic horror scenes where you just have like the normal cow, you have the side profile, but then when it looks towards you, the other side of its head is covered in like boils or some kind of tumor or whatever.
Yeah, I like it.
So yeah, with the cow, you just have to stop traffic. The players have to stop.
That's a good scene too. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if the cow like walks into the road, like makes direct eye contact and just dies, just falls over dead.
Yes.
Pulls out a gun.
Now that would be a feat.
Take it anymore.
Yeah, I struggled a lot with the diseased livestock and boils because it's at once outside of the player's character's notice and also just kind of, it's hard to make it dramatic. The way that I did is I narrated another scene because at this point the agents had gotten the clue that Lindsay is in Pennsylvania. So they were having to drive like 4 hours out of the way and they're going past a bunch of farms and fields. And then Beth was in my game and Beth is a horse girl. And as she turned and looked to the side and as you're about to say, horses, you notice them fall to the ground. And where there are fields of livestock in front, as soon as your car passes, they start falling onto their sides. And so it's
that can be a little upsetting. Yeah, content warning that.
Yeah. I also think about so one of the only 2 diseases in the world that is considered completely eradicated by the WHO is rinderpest, which is a disease of cattle. So just having a news report about a recurrence of a completely eradicated disease that really just ravaged mostly the African continent is somehow cropped up in Ohio farmlands and things like that. But, a little subtly maybe flying under the radar too, because Regina's story is going to be dominating the news.
Yeah, it was besides that, as I just mentioned, that's something that's getting coverage in the news, but it's mostly just John Balfour. They read it in the ticker on the Fox News thing.
Yeah, I like that idea too, because it implies that you're having the agents constantly watch the news, which is probably something you should have the handler or somebody say, keep an eye on this. Don't just investigate. Watch the news and make sure you're not making a fool of yourself.
Too late.
That's true. They're players. It's gonna happen.
I think Alex's idea of combining the boils and the disease of livestock is really good. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. Just a cow covered in boils would be pretty nasty. I also like the idea of, again, that home scene at the very beginning. You just have this really annoying pimple on your face, and just over time it just gets larger and larger and larger. I think there's some room for body horror in this if you want to do that.
Yeah, boils was the one I really struggled with because in my run, I had one of the players' cars start to thunk around. They got into a traffic accident, and so the engine starts making a really bad thunking sound. And I was going to have that whenever they pulled over to the side, they open up the hood and they get sprayed with mystery juice. And then that causes boils and things to go all over whoever is in front of the car's face. They did not do that because for some reason my players don't trust me. And so instead, it was just they had been driving for so long. I basically said that it's getting harder for you to sit still in the car. And so gave them boils all over their ass and back. It made it just narratively kind of funny. It just didn't hit home. One of the suggestions that Beth had after the session was that it would have been a little neater to have something like the boils give a mechanical impact, making certain skill rolls harder or something to that effect. In my run, I did a little debuff with the lice such that the agents would be at a minus 10% to all of their skill rolls because they're distracted and itchy, and they wouldn't be able to regain willpower from a night's sleep until they spent a few hours to go through the treatment to remove their lice. This was just a way to try to stretch out the first few days of the investigation because your players are always going to want to hit the ground running super hard.
I think the rest of the plagues are handled pretty well. The hail and thunder is very much this really dramatic scene in the story itself. And the locusts and darkness, and then of course firstborn's dying. You can't get any more dramatic than that, right?
I would actually disagree that I thought that everything else was condensed really quickly, just at this
I'll agree
Lindsay
with that,
showdown. And that, the players were starting to get antsy because these were not chronologically timed. It seemed almost random, as if the GM was pulling them out of his back pocket whenever was most narratively effective. But yeah, I think that Hail and Thunder is great. Mentioned that a few times. The Locusts, I think, are pretty good as written. The way that I had it, because Lindsay is isolated in the hotel room, and she has put metal over the windows, boarded up the door. She's pretty fortified against men, but she has also taken measures against the unnatural. I just assumed, again, like George is a Delta Green agent, so taught her some elder sign things. So she carves into the outside of the door frame. And as soon as Lindsay and Regina exit out of that door frame, that's when they hear this low rumbling buzz sound. And then everyone gets swarmed by the locusts. Then for darkness, after all of this with Regina, I assume they give Regina back by this point. So nothing happens for several days, maybe, until Tuesday, maybe around 11 a.m. or noon, that there is an unexpected solar eclipse that blocks out the sun over this part of Midwest America. And that is such a great, oh shit, unnatural moment that if they were not earnest to get this resolved before, they should be now, because then they'll know that the 10th is going to be a lot worse.
I find the turning point, at least during my run, my investigators, was during the hailstorm. They looked up and they saw the angel. Yeah, that's definitely a turning point.
Oh, yeah. That's a really fun scene, too. What I did is that typically you're going to have someone driving and someone in the passenger seat. And so the ones that are driving are trying to navigate the cars that are spinning out and this giant hail that's doing more and more damage to the car. I had them be focused on, there was an overpass maybe a half mile away. And so do they want to attempt some difficult drive rolls to try and bust ass to get under that overpass for safety? Or do they want to try and take it safe? Like, what are you doing? So it was tense for the drivers. Then anyone in the passenger seats could try to help. Or I asked if they wanted to look around or something. And Beth's character was the only one that passed an alertness roll to look up at the skies. And so I handed her that cool artwork as a private message. And her panicked roleplay reaction describing what she saw was 10 times better than anything I could have described what happened with the players around them. Nice. It was a really fun alternate method I do recommend for GMs.
Yeah. You mentioned as well that the locusts were swarming the hotel, which I think is a really good part of that. Like, I like that imagery. How do you feel about just replacing the haunting horror? Because there's that secondary threat being there, but that felt very out of left field to me, and why not just have the bugs be it?
I wrote it up as maybe that was what Beth's agent saw in the clouds that swooped down. But yeah, I think that the haunting horror just insta-gibbing Lindsay is the start of the downfall of the ending.
Okay.
I did not like the sniper showdown. I just had the locusts be the main threat there. And I think that that's going to be the turning point for your players to really figure out what their ending is going to be. If it's going to be a protracted cat and mouse chase, and then you'll have to really think on the fly for that there, or, are they going to get Regina, hand her over?
And then obviously the last plague is all those firstborn dying, and that's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
But what's funny is it's everyone. Like, it's not a firstborn thing. It's just like, oh, genie out of the bottle.
Oh yeah.
Apocalypse.
The scenario did give a good description that this isn't like a sentient tornado like the Titan in Hercules that's like going around smashing houses, but that it is just unbridled pestilence sweeping across the continental US. And that it's not immediately paranormal, but the players will know that it was their fault.
Yeah, and it is interesting. You mentioned that, and I wanted to look back at that, and it is, everybody gets sick with some unknown disease, and the players can even, like, treat themselves for it. Like, it just takes a medicine roll, but generally everybody that's not a firstborn doesn't die. Does that feel a little bit too much like wanting to have your cake and eat it too, in terms of, like, Is it just to make it not obviously supernatural?
I'm not really sure. Like I said, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about the ending as written in this. I think GMs are going to need to put in some elbow grease. This is the part that I struggled the most with.
I do like, though, that it's bad. Like, it's really bad. And it's not just like oh, yeah, like, this happens. Oh, you kill the angel? If you kill the angel, it still goes off. Like, that doesn't stop it.
Right.
Which, I mean, I've said it before. I hate that in these games where you killed the mythos thing? It dissolves. There you go. Problem solved. That's shooting the angel is a really bad idea, too.
Yeah. What happened in my game was, by this point, Lucy Bates inducted them into Delta Green and then just said, like, so what are we going to do? I'm going to get to this point a little bit later, but ultimately my players got drones and bombed the church whenever they were doing the ritual, because they're like, no, they weren't very combat heavy. And so they're not going to do a suicide run. They're just going to like die at the front door.
I think I'm going to tell you how I handled the ending there, right? Because just the PCs versus the church cult, whatever, suicide, that's not great. What I ended up doing is having like a protest going on with like a row of riot police and keeping out the protesters. So when you have a lot of just moving people around, there's going to be chaos, and therefore all that gunfire and attacks, they're not going to be targeted to just the PCs, which will give the PCs an opportunity to sneak in under the cover of this chaos, which gives them a fighting chance. And it also provides for an awesome backdrop, right? I think that a line of riot police fending off like these protesters is kind of cool. It's a cool set piece. They've got their shields and they're like slamming them down on the ground. The protesters are yelling out against this injustice and against this like hate group.
Yeah.
And then
it's going to be big in the news too. Yeah. That's such a cool look.
And then a car bomb goes off and it flips 5 times in the air in a fucking fireball, and then things just go crazy.
So it's interesting you use protesters because Nathan, we're sharing a brain cell right now, because what I did throughout my run of this is I made the media a big threat in terms of something to always keep in mind. And at the point that it turns into a total eclipse, like these plagues and things are now starting to reach the news, and the eclipse is, oh shit, this is actually happening. This is actually real. It's not just the followers of the church that are flocking to it. It's everyone. It's the reporters are trying to get in to save their own lives or their kids or what have you. So if the media is a threat that you can keep ratcheting up the tension or raising the pressure, the eclipse in that finale is when the top just blows off. And now the media has just turned into a big source of chaos and swarming around on the property.
Yeah, and I can imagine, too, if you're looking at that as a finale scene, the father's got to be on all these news programs talking about how, it's the government's fault that his daughter was taken and might have been recovered. It's the government's fault that these plagues are happening because they won't let his church, do whatever it wants to do, or because he's not the theological leader of the United States. I think that's his goal. So yeah, just having him be on the news being a complete asshole is a great time.
Alternatively, I think with the ending, you could even, especially if the players like return Regina to her family, in their gratitude, they invite the players to their worship ceremony, which kind of gives the players like that initial in the first place. And it doesn't necessarily have to turn into like suicide bombers and things like that. You can kind of play it in a little bit of a different way. What you got, Lex?
I am so glad you brought that up, Holly, because that's an interesting take. And it's not the one that I did because of how I sort of built the Balfours in my mind, but it also led to an unexpected pitfall. I had the Balfours be very concerned parents who just want to get their daughter back, and they are absolutely willing to work with the agents as much as they can to help secure their daughter. Once they get Regina, though, that mask of nicety and politeness completely drops, and they completely hole away and shell up.
Okay.
Because I intended for this to mirror Lindsay's struggles. The players know that it's a bad idea to hand Regina over because these people desperately stole her to keep her away from all of this, and they just undid all of it. Now, whenever they try to go through these proper channels again, everything that they were doing, trying to contact through the doctor, through the hospital, through this and that, they get stonewalled at every single turn because the Balfours were using all of their connections to keep Regina on lockdown for the next 24 to 48 hours until the ceremony. This unexpectedly backfired for me at the table because the players felt like nothing that they did mattered and that their characters had no agency and that they weren't doing the right thing to try to get a hold of Regina. And it wasn't until after the session that I explained this and I was just like, no, this was sanity loss from helplessness because your characters now realized nothing that they can do officially mattered, and that they realized this is probably what Lindsay and George went through the second time around. And so I really recommend explaining all of that from a top level standpoint and then having them lose a D6 SAN off the bat.
Yeah.
Like, don't give them a roll, but this is a true helplessness situation. Because whenever I just explained it in person at the table, they were frustrated. But whenever I explained all of that, they were really nodding along. And I think that that can be a cool moment to loop things back to George and Lindsay, because at this point they may have sort of forgotten about them. If you're going to have them stonewall the outsiders out.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to run the opposition with so much resources, and it seems so impenetrable without
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of pull the curtain aside a bit and sort of talk from a higher game level perspective instead of keeping it completely in character, because it just led to some frustration at the table.
I think we should do an episode about that.
You heard it here first, listeners.
I think in my mind, I think that at some point, especially when the players are armed with the knowledge that the Balfours are going to kill Regina, like, I don't know what's stopping your players from just aiding and abetting Lindsay, helping her flee the country with the little girl, taking the girl with them and just running. You know, I
think the one prevention is there's no notes on that in the scenario.
Yeah.
Right.
That is exactly what my players wanted to do, and I really wanted to work with them on that. But this was the last session that we could schedule before we hit like a 3-month gap. And so I just needed to wrap it up. I really wished we could have done that chase.
Is there something you could do instead? Like, maybe Lindsay doesn't know that they want to kill her. You know, like, is there a way to obfuscate the plan to actually kill her? And Lindsay's just like, this is a cult. I'm just saving their daughter from a cult. I don't know.
She's got the video cassette with the Passover angel.
Yeah.
That like addresses her in the video.
Like, that's the reason she basically sacrificed her whole life to do this.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's one thing I just want to fix, because even non-DG agents, like, why would I ever hand over this little girl that I know they're going to sacrifice?
And that's where I really recommend using the media as a big threat, because the media and the Balfours are all over this. So
like tailing. Yeah, I know it's written that John is like, won't ever leave them alone. Yeah. I guess that's what you got to do.
And so that's where you're basically going to enter into like a fugitive manhunt that I think that you can, if you can plot this out ahead of time, it'll be a really cool finale, because then they'll have to drive the car through a horde of locusts as now Nye is trying to stop them from progressing. And you can have really cool scenes like that. I regretfully didn't do it in my run.
Yeah, and maybe that's the end result of that is, have that kind of scene prepped, have them do one big escape with locusts, maybe the angel shows up, shoots lightning at him, whatever. But then, I mean, I think it's okay to say at that point, like, if your agents survive, if they get Regina out of there, that to me that's the conclusion of the scenario. Is
congrats.
Your agents are now on the run for
their lives are ruined.
Probably the rest of their lives.
Yeah, they saved the world.
Yep.
That's
Take
a good
the
point.
sanity
Sort
loss,
of, because I mean, that Sarah's going to sacrifice herself anyway. So
I would
ditch that.
that part
sincerely,
out.
I think that there is very little opportunity for them to know or even guess that. And it felt like the author built in a couple of backups. You know, if they miss this clue, then this gets turned in, etc. And so he kind of did the same thing with the finale, but it just didn't really work in this regard.
I think the author, not to speak on the author's behalf, but if I was writing the scenario, I think I would do that to get them to the climax, which would be at the compound.
Right.
Yeah.
It is written with all arrows lead to the compound explosion,
Right.
which like that was my main gripe with this scenario.
Yeah, there's probably another way too to I don't have an immediate answer, but have them have to be at the compound at that time, even if it's not with Regina, to stop the
And they're
angel.
assigned duty to follow up and keep an eye.
Well, right, but something where beyond just I gotta look at it is some motivation to be there and take action.
Well, here's the thing:
because
if they're
otherwise you just
FBI
show up and,
or law enforcement, right, and then
yeah,
people as part of this congregation start shooting at other innocent people with assault rifles and set off bombs, of course the law enforcement's gonna react to that and try and stop it.
so maybe have them do that earlier, like not at the time.
I just think that comes down to your player characters, though, because if you have a social worker, a book nerd FBI agent, and one U.S. Marshal that like they were not going to. I had them find George's weapon stash in his green box to like arm them to the teeth with multiple fully automatic rifles. And they were still like, nah, I'm not going to go over and start opening up in that. So it depends on your players, I think, to keep in mind.
It depends on the pre-gens as well, right?
Oh, you would use pre-gens for this?
You could.
If it's going to end with everyone dying anyway.
Yeah.
Like pre-gens, they're just another way of controlling the narrative.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can apply the "Are you the firstborn?" and just have it in the backstory.
Yeah.
It might be a little subtler, but I agree with the previous point. At some point, they're gonna look in a book and be like, "Oh, hey guys, this 10th plague looks not good for me specifically."
They get Thanos snapped away from reality.
No, they get cholera. I looked it up. That's what the final thing is
it is
a new
cholera.
strain of cholera that kills that everybody gets, but anybody that's not a firstborn eventually recovers.
So the ritual
pretty
summons
safely.
the Oregon Trail, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
A disease that's entirely preventable by modern antibiotics. Give them smallpox. Come on. That's even more biblical.
Yeah.
Also, kind of in that same vein of smallpox and other details to bring in, some advice that I would give for GMs to really try to emphasize some of the beating hearts in this scenario would be to take some notes and prep ahead of time of some Christian mythology references and some passages from the Bible that you can keep in a little notepad next to you. Because if you can pepper a lot of these references in throughout the scenario, in the beginning, especially before it becomes too obvious, your players are going to start looking everywhere for it with that 20/20 hindsight. This is also related to like the casting of Sarah as Bev from Midnight Mass, because I loved how that character would always be able to quote some passage from the Bible and twist it into something that supports her misdeeds. That was not something that I could really do on the fly.
Right.
Like I still, whenever you ask me to quote the books of the Bible, I'm like, is it John, Paul, George, and Ringo? I kind of dropped the ball on that one, and it was just difficult for me to do. I think that this is something that could take it up just to that 12th level. But I will give a little asterisk, though, is that your results are not guaranteed, because I tried making John's vehicle a white Ford Bronco to mimic the death comes riding a pale horse at the end of that 7th plague. But instead, I just got a lot of OJ jokes out of it.
Yeah,
so,
like the one I made.
hey, I mean, like he wouldn't drive a white Mustang, but I tried.
So he drove up to them on the highway, and you could see all the police cars following him.
Those were the jokes at the table.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's probably a talk about that is what happens when you accidentally across a reference that makes it kind of comical. But I do think the Christian mythology thing is big for the Passover angel. And that's one of the difficulties I have when I was reading this and then comparing the art. Because generally, an angel's a big deal, and they're beautiful, and they're terrifying. But not because they're ugly and they're gnarled and twisted and have chains on them for some reason. They're awe-inspiring. And I think that's kind of a missed fun point to have is on that video is it's a light. It's this incredible figure that you can't even really describe. And that booming voice saying like, nothing you can do, Agent Grapevine, will help. And then, yeah, your players are going, well, fuck, maybe it is an angel. Because why would Nyarlathotep not be a beautiful angel? He's tricky. I just also think, too, because Lindsay's getting these visions of this, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Like, and the idea is that the players are, if they take out Lindsay or they get noticed, somehow they're going to start getting them, too. I feel like I would want that to start earlier once they start kind of cottoning on to the idea that these plagues are maybe not just happenstance. So you know, that would be the time that the angel starts showing up and saying things like, retrieve my daughter, she needs to be saved, return her to the flock. Helpful, kind things that an angel would do. Not, here come the locusts.
So something that I did with that is I either described this very tall, hunched, shadowy figure in the background in ways that the player characters did not see, but trying to create that horror movie tension in the background. And also, whenever John would keep popping up in places that he shouldn't have known where it is, and like of tailing the agents, that I had a great moment where one of the agents, basically he pulled off the road, turned around and was trying to like hide their car from John because they knew he was following them after the hailstorm. And they saw just for a split second, a passenger in his seat, this hunched hooded figure. And that you can actually see glimpses of this shade of Nyarlathotep is also giving John clues and kind of whispering in his ear that way. So it's just a little ubiquitous figure.
Yeah.
I think you could go in an interesting direction if you provided a pre-gen that is a very religious person that may draw some parallels in their personal life. Like, that may feel conflict with it.
Yeah, and then too, if you do things like when that angel appears over that shoulder and is whispering to him, have John have like a lens flare halo. Like, that goes back to Alex's point about doubt. That's a really good chance for your agents to be like, maybe we should be helping John. Like, it looks like there may be an actual angel talking to him. Are we positive that this is a negative force? Because Delta Green's always assuming it's negative. What if it isn't? It is. But what if it wasn't?
But what if?
It's about sowing that doubt.
Exactly.
Are there any parts of the scenario that we would want to remove or change, add in?
I just really didn't like handout number 4. It just kind of made me mad. Because this is like a suicide note that George sends to his sister. It's like, oh, you wouldn't believe me if I told you why, but it's all in your head if you do. I'm like, what is that? What does that give? I'm getting irrationally upset. I'm going to breathe. But like, these are his last words. At least he can say something substantial, like, oh, I know the angel is real or something. Something to give to the PCs as a clue to maybe get rid of some of that doubt, because you do want both sides.
Yeah.
Right? And as for handout 3, which is the secret, like, inscribed text, if you compare it to the...
In Jeremiah,
Yeah, it's like, just give it to him. Don't require 4 weeks of study, because by that time, everyone's already dead or done and dusted. Just give it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, if I may, I addressed that and some other things with switching this over to Delta Green I think you might like.
Go for it.
So George was a seasoned Delta Green agent. I had him be Agent Greenleaf. And he had worked with Lucy Bates or Agent Fahrenheit on a previous op or two. Whenever he stopped checking in and someone in Delta Green, I had this be a program game, and someone within the program caught that security camera footage, and that is a reason why this happened so quickly. It's almost suspiciously quickly. Lucy, again, contacts some people who are on the short list to be an agent, and then says, hey, officially, you are going to be here to follow up on this case and look into George Lewiston. It's not like him to fuck up like this. And whenever they go to his house is completely empty and cleaned up. This is pretty much verbatim straight from the book. Except on top of the smashed ruins of his computer, there is a sticky note with a key on it, a little master lock key. And the note says, "Seek a frog paste," where it's SEEKE. And the players will recognize that this is an anagram. If they give it to Lucy Bates, she can also give them that clue too, that like, yeah, he used to love these puzzles and shit. Whenever the players kind of spell these out, it translates to safe keep storage. And that key will then open Lewiston's green box. The green box contains some of his memorabilia from past missions, a weapons stash that he had, a cork board that was showing he was obsessively following the Balfour's movements and targeting when they would make their shopping runs. And that's why he pinpointed them at this Walmart at this time. And then most importantly, on a little fold-out table is a GoPro with a USB plugged into it with a sticky note that says something like, "Fuck you, Gershwin, I was right." And then a copy of the Book of the Passover Angel that is stuffed with sticky notes and annotations and things. Basically, he's already done the research for the agents.
Nice.
And if they just squint through his little notes, they can get all of that information. Related to like the secret message, toss out that, Nyarlathotep, don't like, oh my God, too far on the nose. But to have him already have translated that message, that just gives it to the players that this is very bad. Whenever they plug in the GoPro, which is how he recorded what happened at that church, then I took a page from one of my favorite scenes in Constantine, where I narrated what is on the footage, and then the Passover Angel's voice was like an absence in the static, that it wasn't an actual audio in the recording, but the footage gets so distorted it almost makes a sound. And it says something like, "George, you can't stop us." And then the footage fritzes, "And neither can you, Nathan." Like whoever was watching it. And if they try to take it back, it doesn't repeat that anymore.
Nice.
But what it does do is completely melt their computer, as like the volume and the brightness gets so loud that it just burns it all out. So that's where George had shared it with Lindsay. That explains why Lindsay's laptop is completely bricked whenever it's at her apartment.
Nice.
And then there is a like torn piece of the package for the prepaid debit card that's in the trash. So the green box is all of the clues. It's kind of impossible for them to miss it by finding that key and sticky note there. Just give that to them. And from there, it was a big turning point in the whole investigation. I really recommend doing this green box thing because it solved so many of the big issues that I had with this scenario.
Yeah.
Do you feel like at that point, like the time frame is you're not getting as much of that tension of, we only have so much time if you have a lot, like in my mind, to me also, because I just tend to run investigations faster than like every scenario ever predicts I will. I would probably have them snatch her on like Sunday or Saturday, something where it's like it's lighting a fire under everyone's ass. Like this little girl she's gonna be gone in 2 days, especially if you deliver it like with a green box, right? And you have all these clues.
And that was something that I really struggled with in running it, because every time that we run these scenarios, these players are just, all right, we gotta go. And
they're working through the night. They're not sleeping. They're like, all right, I'm downing espressos.
Exactly. But the clues in the scenario are hard to find. And it's for that reason, kind of hard for them to just blitz through it. So I do recommend being kind of judicious and forcing them to take hours and potentially like, oh, they'll call you back in the morning. The office is closed. Like it's out of their hands. And so you have to pace it out. So by the time that they decide to pull up this green box after searching through Google for all the different storage containers, this should be past your halfway point. For those that don't believe, George looks like a very sick man. Like I had one of his memorabilia is a "Don't Tread on Me" flag that has brain matter sprayed on it that he kept from one of his previous ops. And with the obsessive tracking and the weapons in his thing, he seems deranged. And it's only if folks are buying into this Delta Green type narrative that they'll say, oh, okay, no, this guy's actually dialed in. So it seeded some doubt until they came around on it, but it delivered all of the main essential clues. and you can have people call in with the other ones to help find Lindsay and take the scenario home. Maybe take Regina home. Oh, also, while I'm here, there was one other little tweak that I made for Regina. I didn't like the intranasal steroid medication thing. The chronic illnesses didn't seem very special. So I had Regina be born with a severe congenital heart dysfunction. And she had struggled for a long time, for years, on a transplant list, until there was a miracle donation from an anonymous source that was an exact match for her. So she got to jump right up on the list. And the surgeon who did the transplant has no other medical records or documentation. In my game, I had it be a Dr. L. Goodman who did the surgery. But if you're doing Delta Green, you could also have it be a Dr. S. Alziz. And basically, Regina was implanted with this like black withered heart from Nyarlathotep or something to make her an even more perfect vessel for the ritual. Because the first time got fucked up, so this time they're going to make sure it goes off. And for this reason, because it's something unnatural being kept inside of her, her body is constantly trying to reject it. So she is having to stay on this combination of immunosuppressants, calcineurin inhibitors, and anti-proliferative agents that is common. Like people from a transplant will take these for a few months afterwards. She's taking them a year later. So anyone with medical skill will be like, that's weird, actually. She shouldn't need them that much. But it's just a little fun detail that you can dial in.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense, because, too, she needs to be a little bit more important to running it, because that does strain credulity a little bit. They say they give up on that Tuesday morning and they start prepping Sarah. But, like, if there's any doubt, like, I've met a lot of people of faith for some reason, and my thinking would be, oh, God's keeping my daughter from me. I should use somebody else. Okay, like, why not? Like, there's no reason you couldn't go, who do I like least in our congregation? Johnny Zero, get over here.
Oh, no.
Not Johnny
Zero. Come on down.
Huh?
Who's going to make all the car bombs?
Turns out we don't need to do that. If we just kill Johnny Zero, no one will care.
So I feel like this scenario really does want you to have that scene at the church as the climax. And to me, honestly, that does feel like an interesting way to end the scenario. And I certainly don't want to railroad players into it. But are there any strategies that we can think of that kind of, because, like, again, there's that whole, why don't the players simply run away with this little girl, ruin their reputation, ruin their lives, etc. Is there anything that we could think of that kind of, I don't know, because again, like, I don't know why as a player I wouldn't simply just do that.
I think the truth is, I think part of it depends on the GM mentality. Like, they're gonna, sometimes GMs are just safe with sticking with what's written, and they try to subconsciously push the scenario by leaving clues to get towards that. But I think if you really want complete freedom, just be cognizant and willing to completely abandon the text and go improv. Or be a hyper planner like me and would just write out those options.
Yeah, I think it's important to be flexible. I think it'll be really helpful to plot out what will happen when they try to take Regina with them. Because I think that it's most plausible you're going to have this thrilling, intense manhunt chase, but with the agents at the mouse end of this game of cat and mouse. And then, like, are they going to get found? As soon as they're found, then that could be a really cool, helpless scene that they get thrown in prison for all of this, totally fuck everything up, and they get to watch from behind bars as Regina is brought back to the church and the ritual goes off around them. So they're either going to have this tooth and nail try to scrape to get away from Tuesday, and you can describe all sorts of nasty shit happening to them, like until the sun rises on Wednesday, or, you know, something in between there.
You know, to be honest, why I am not really gung-ho about the Delta Green thing is the fact that once they figure out, oh, they really need Regina, we're just going to shoot her.
Just kill the little girl.
That seems kind of...
That's exactly why I don't think you should do full Delta Green agents.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I have one minor nitpick before we move on. The minorist. Why would the Passover angel give people the elder's sign? Hey guys, here's the thing I don't like, and we'll save. Why? Why?
So, this is one thing that is totally not explained in the scenario. I just assumed that since George was part of their church, he saw the carving around their little bomb shelter cover and took a rubbing of that and then translated that over for Lindsay to say like, hey, they had this. Maybe it's something helpful.
Oh,
because I don't think that that's the Passover angel saying, by the way, here's your way to block me off. I think that John learned that as part of his trip in Kenya and doing all of this research to kind of derive all of this.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than what they have of like, oh, the angel teaches. Why would it ever do?
Oh, it actually says the angel teaches them? Nah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And I agree. Like, I can see the bit of like, oh yeah, you're daubing lamb blood. It's kind of analogous, but this is also one of those Nyarlathotep things where it's like,
oh, he's fighting against themselves.
Yeah, like, wouldn't he just be the biggest dick he could be? Maybe not. I don't know.
Are there any handouts or props we'd want to make and use for the scenario?
There's a really great handout online that James Alday did for the Passover Angel that we're going to include the show notes. Really great resource, and it has all the little frogs.
Yeah, I do like when the community brings things to life like that. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah.
Besides the better, in my opinion, art from the Spanish language version, I'm going to put a link in the show notes for that there. I'm also happy to provide the little handouts that I made with the seek a frog paste clue that was really easy to help lead them over to the green box. Also, there was a user on Reddit who made some really nice handouts in addition to the website. There's also a copy of the book of the Passover Angel and some other stuff that you can find online. We'll try to provide links in the show notes there.
We hope our deranged utterings are helpful in bringing this scenario to life at your table. Be sure to check out the show notes of this episode for links to get a copy of the scenario for yourself, any RPG resources we can share, actual plays of this scenario that we recommend, as well as an invite to our lab's Discord server to discuss more reanimations. We also post these episodes and resources to our Patreon that's free to follow, or if you like, you can make a charitable donation to help us keep the ominously flickering lights on at the H. West Memorial Mortuary and Laboratories. So until next time, thanks for listening to RPG Reanimators,
where your games can die
or live
on the table.
Oh, okay, there it is.
I was like, come on, man.
Oh,
I was trying to think if there was like a biblical horn sound, like, but I got nothing.
That's not bad.
I don't know, Horns of Jericho.
Maybe a harp.
Or something, yeah.
Oh, that'll be a fun.
Bling, bling, bling.
Are we moving on to Reverend John Ballsack? No.